Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-hosts, Matty B and Jeff Meyer. Got a big show planned. Let's go right into high tempo. Jeff, you got anything for us this week?
So my high tempo topic for the week is the Barstool blunder. Dave Portnoy getting drug out of the Super Bowl. I know now this is a couple times this has happened. It's a publicity stunt, just trying to get attention to Barstool. And he just talks, crap on Roger Goodell, and it's working for him as they just get more popular and more popular. It's kind of getting old, but went to media day, got essentially escorted out of there. And then the Super Bowl, he got drug out by two guys. His feet were limp. He didn't want to leave the game. Got drug out what appeared to be halftime. So, hey, I guess it's working for them. More publicity. Any publicity is good publicity, and Barstool's doing well.
I actually saw I guess it was a research material put together by, I think, maybe The Ringer or one of the other newspapers. It might have been The Athletic, because it was saying that in terms of unique readers, Barstool only gets 1 million a month, which is the same, and I think it's a month. It could be a longer period. I don't know what the time for the research was, but it was the exact same as The Athletic, which is crazy to me because The Athletic is a paid newspaper. So they're basically getting the same amount of readers paying for their site that Barstool gets. So they have to be successful at this point in their juncture because it's a new newspaper. And I thought that was crazy. I think the Ringer's right around the same, but they're not on the paid model. So it's good because people are trying to get sports news. But I think the other crazy thing I saw was Deadspin has a ton more readers than those three sites, which is crazy to me because they kind of just do hot takes on the industry as a whole, not so much journalism. But Matt, what do you got for high tempo this week?
On Friday, Julius Peppers announced his retirement, and I thought outstanding career. 17 years in the league, number 2 draft pick, was Rookie of the Year, 9-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, was number 4 in the NFL for career sacks, and Carolina boy. So thought I'd send him some love.
Yeah, did you see the video that they put together? They actually had a send-out for him. I'll try to find it and put it out on our Twitter and Facebook. But they have, I honestly thought that they signed him just to have him retire, but they got a few more years out of him, which just shows how athletic he truly was. Because once you reach a certain point as a defensive end, it's hard to get a push. It's hard you lose that first step. It's hard to make an impact in the game. So definitely, truly one of the greats. And for my high tempo, I didn't put it on here, but they finally did they announced the Hall of Fame class, and Michigan man Ty Law, a local Pittsburgh guy from Aliquippa, made it into the Hall of Fame. And I think it was a surprise to a lot of people just because of the other names that were out there. Our guy, Alan Faneca, and I thought Alan Faneca by far was the best lineman on there. Steelers fans should remember him fondly. He was one of the best guards. If you grew up playing Madden, he always had one of the highest offensive lineman rankings for almost a decade, it seems. Didn't get in. So very disappointed there, and hoping that he can make another run at it. But on the other side of things, it's just a little bit different. On one hand, you have a lot of controversy for Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And then I thought the NFL one seemed pretty straightforward. Some guys missed out, but maybe we'll get into that at a later date. But going to focus on Super Bowl, but let's get into a little bit of the Steel City update. We're going to start leaving this off of the actual topics list, but the big one for the Steelers, Antonio Brown, news came out that he was not arrested, getting in the news for a domestic dispute. And to me, just stay out of the news. It's not that hard. I don't know if he can come back to the Steelers at this point. And I'm getting all fumbled up on my words, but if you're in the news for all the wrong reasons, and the NFL is trying to cut anyone down that's involved in any domestic dispute, and I'm sure they're going to do an investigation, it's time just to cut them loose. So I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that. Matt, we'll start with you. What do you think?
When I saw that and I sent that to you, it just infuriated me because he's going to try to paint himself into this where, just like with Le'Veon Bell, they're going to try to make it out to be where the town is running them out and blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is they're doing it themselves. And if that's the way that they're going to act off the field, then get going. If Super Bowl Sunday you learned anything, you don't need a superstar wide receiver to win the Super Bowl. You just need illegal performance-enhancing drugs.
Matt,
and then you win.
Don't even go there.
He served a suspension for performance-enhancing drugs.
But did you read the report?
No, there is no but. It is yes. He missed the games because of performance-enhancing drugs.
No, but there's a thin line there because they couldn't actually identify what was in his system. They just know that it was an irregular spike. Could have been anything. What if he was taking Viagra? I'm sure that wouldn't have been named. It's not like they're testing dudes for ED. That guaranteed. So that could trigger it. We don't know. And he filed his appeal, wanted them to look into it, and they just were like, nah. So, I don't know. Are you sleeping on that one? I think we might have lost Jeff.
Get out of here. That nonsense.
What, you honestly think that the whole team is on performance-enhancing drugs? NFL tests the most out of any sport.
I would be shocked, and I'm not just going to limit it to New England. I think across the league, you're going to have. I would bet across all professional sports, you have guys trying to take different supplements or different things to prolong their careers. But you're right, there is a fine line. It's either you test positive or you don't test positive. Either there's things in your system or there isn't.
Well,
there is no fine line.
And I'm very hard on this for Major League Baseball, and I'll keep the same stance. I think you can't identify it. Could be a false positive. You don't know. I think what they should have done is sat on it, like they tried to do with Barry Bonds, and test it, and for whatever, just make it a retroactive. And I know it might not work if guys are out of the league, but if it comes out because it usually takes a year or so for the testing agency to catch up with the newest trends. In a year or so, suspend him for the entire season. If he wants to appeal it, then you're later to identify it, or more. Like, go above and beyond. Say, hey, you fought this. We took it away because it could have been a false positive. We don't know for sure. We're not going to hold it against you. Because I honestly think he could still sue if they're not able to do it. What Major League Baseball did was they got the additional testing in like 2004, which I think was like 2 or 3 years after the initial. Then they didn't release those names. And if you remember, someone from the media kind of got a leak, and it was leaked out that possibly Big Papi David Ortiz was on that list, but they never actually released the list. So then they were able to like drip feed other guys to keep like the bigger guys like Alex Rodriguez out of the news. And they used it, and I thought that was a complete and total scam. And that's why I think Major League Baseball should just let everyone in, because if you're going to control it to that point and not be transparent with it, whatever. I think the NFL could do that and say, hey, we don't know, could be a false positive, we can't identify it, but we're going to hold this and we're going to keep testing it for 3 to 5 years or until you retire or even post-retirement, because then you could use that as a case for they're talking about him for the Hall of Fame. What do you think about that, Matt? Do you think he's a Hall of Fame guy?
No.
Why not?
Because and it kind of goes back to your high tempo, but I think when you're looking at the Hall of Fame, why do you have to have X number of people? Why do you have to put so many people in? If you're looking off the merit of who is a Hall of Fame player, not a good player, not a good player on a great team, you're getting to where you're starting to dilute some of it. If you realistically think he belongs in that discussion. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, if you're just comparing receivers, if you think Julian Edelman's better than Terrell Owens, you don't know football. Terrell Owens, if you look at his career as a whole, much better than Julian Edelman. And unfortunately, I know we talk about this a lot with the Patriots, but Julian Edelman is a product of that system, and being with the greatest quarterback ever, I don't think he is a top-tier receiver, even though he's played big in big games. So that's my counter argument. He shines when you need to, makes the big plays, played well in the Super Bowl. Especially when Brady, I feel like, did not, especially in the first half. Edelman played the entire game well, but I would not say he's a Hall of Fame caliber player when the receiver position, I feel like, is one of the most scrutinized positions when it comes to the Hall of Fame. Like I mentioned, Terrell Owens, Chad Ochocinco, Chad Johnson, whatever you want to call him, he's not in. There's much more that put up. Calvin Johnson's not in the Hall of Fame yet. So if he would be in the Hall of Fame later down the road, there's going to be a lot of players that need inducted before him.
And I agree to your point. It comes down to, what are you trying to put in? Do you want guys that are productive? Do you want guys that are winners? Do you want to put guys in for personality reasons? Or do you want to keep them out for personality reasons on the flip side? Because I feel like, and I feel like that's what they're trying to do. And once you get into that, which is what Major League Baseball did, they used to have, I thought their Hall of Fame was awesome up until about like 1999. And almost impeccable without, all they needed to do was put in Pete Rose, and I think they should have put in Shoeless Joe. And because they use those political things to keep them out, now their Hall of Fame is a mess, and I think it will constantly be under fire until people vote and the old baseball writers, I guess, just are gone, and they're able to re-put some of these guys in. I think the rules will change. I don't want the NFL to get to that. They need to be consistent because some of the other guys that they've talked about receiver-wise, I think the guys you mentioned, like T.O., he should 100% be in. He should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I don't know how they do it. Alan Faneca should have been first ballot. Like, he was an all-time great guard. But for whatever reason, NFL favors tackles or centers. I think a center got in this year. Yep. And they're like, guards aren't as valuable. It's not like they're polling and doing other things too. So there's a complete bias, and I think that's what hurts Edelman's case because they look at it. I mean, just on merits alone, he has the second most receiving yards in the postseason of all time behind Jerry Rice. He has a Super Bowl MVP now. What kind of production are you looking for? Do you want regular season heroes? Or do you want a shrine to winners? Yeah. Because at that point, put Faneca in. Hey, dude has a ring. Dude was a winner. Dude was in the Pro Bowl for how many years? You have Julian Edelman. I just don't see how they can start to pick and choose other receivers just because of their regular season stats. Because at some point, the guy's kind of like a slot receiver. He's not a big number one speed threat like T.O. He wasn't a guy you're going to fear, but longevity in the league and stats. Like, I think the playoff stuff has to take into account.
Yeah. See, I think you make a good point there.
Go ahead, Matt.
It factors into the discussion, but I don't think championships are the be-all, end-all because there's handfuls of players who have, like the Tyree that made one catch in the Super Bowl. Does that qualify him as a Hall of Famer? Because he made that one play that knocked off the Patriots in their undefeated year. Like, I feel like that's kind of the direction that they're heading in.
You can take my man Desmond Howard. He won the MVP as a kick returner. Would that be enough to get you in? One great performance. And I don't think that should get you in. But if it's a sustained, let's say he has like 7 punt returns in the playoffs over a 10-year career or something, I think that changes the discussion. And Edelman's been there. He's been Brady's only reliable receiver. You can throw in the Mosses and the Ochocincos. It just depends is he going to retire early or is he going to keep going and doing it and building up his stats? Like, I don't think he's retiring this year, which changes the discussion.
See, I think the one thing we're missing here with the Hall of Fame, did the player change the game? Were they the best player in their position for multiple years? Did they have a huge impact? Edelman's had a huge impact on the Patriots in the postseason, but he doesn't have the regular season impact that some of these other players. You could argue that Terrell Owens, Ocho Cinco were some of the best receivers at their respective position for multiple years. Calvin Johnson, same story. But mentioning like the playoff thing, you couldn't refuse a person like Dan Marino who didn't win a ring. He was clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the league for a decade, changed the game. I mean, at that point in the NFL, Dan Marino changed the way offenses were run, how the passing game essentially worked. But yeah, Faneca, though, I don't understand how he didn't get in. Was one of the best linemen at the guard position in the NFL for multiple years. Was an amazing puller. Won a Super Bowl. I mean, you already mentioned that, but I don't know. When I think about like people who changed the game, especially obviously a different position, but the safety position, an Ed Reed, a Troy Polamalu, they have the highlights. They have the career stats. They both have Super Bowl rings though too, but I don't know. Edelman's, I feel like a bubble kind of guy. Like, yes, he has the amazing postseasons, but there's no time in his career so far that I'd say he was a top 5 receiver.
Yeah, he just has to keep his career going. I'm trying to see how many seasons, if it says that he's played. He's been playing since 2009, so that's 1, 2, 3, 9. I think he missed one whole season here. 9, 3-time Super Bowl champ. He's still like 5,000 receiving yards. So there are a lot of guys that have the 8 to 10,000 receiving yards. And is he able to build that case where he's on that level? Because the biggest comparison that I saw looking at that was AJ Green. Playing the same time. AJ Green has like 8,000 receiving yards, so he has a couple thousand more, but he doesn't have near the impact in the playoffs that Edelman has, and it could be a product of his team. But I think you're more comparing him to a guy like that than guys in years past like T.O. that really didn't have a career that overlapped with them. But we'll see. Antonio Brown's like the next guy up. Amazing stats. He hasn't won a ring. If he jumps ship, what happens to him? And that's what we'll be looking at. But I want to get into more of the Super Bowl stuff. I'll start with you, Coach. What was your take on the game? Defensive struggle. What did it end up being? 13-3? I think that was the final. Go ahead and give us your analysis.
I actually liked watching the Super Bowl, and I know there were some people on my Twitter feed that were saying how boring it was, but when you really understood what New England was trying to do, specifically with the early downs, they were trying to take the running game away and some of the play action passing. So it was part of the chess match. They knew what the Rams did well, and it was interesting to see how they were going to cover it. And you kind of watched it the other way around with New England. They were ground and pound through the playoffs, and the way that the Rams were able to defend some of their running game and putting them into some 3rd and longs, it made for an interesting matchup just to see how they were going to adjust. And I think what you saw is late in the second half, the Patriots generated enough offense. The one thing that really stood out to me, though, was the special teams. And it doesn't get enough respect, but the real MVP of that Super Bowl was the New England special teams, because they pinned the Rams deep the majority of the game, and they were working out of the back of their end zone. I'm actually surprised that they never had a safety because of how many times they started drives inside the 10, inside the 5.
There was one punt that I saw. It bounced up, and it looked like it was going to be caught at the 1 yard line, but for whatever reason, the Patriots guy ran up and caught it at the 5. And I yelled at my TV, like, what are you doing? Just wait till it comes down to you instead of jumping in the air and trying to catch it, because it would have been a perfect punt. But you're right. Pinned him deep. And I love games like that. And I know that can fly in the face of some of the things I say on the show because I like the spread offense, the Mike Leach style where you're passing all over. But to me, that was pure football. There was a lot more going into missed field goals. I mean, Tony Romo had a bunch of talk about. He was in his own head trying to decide whether they should kick that field goal to give them the 2-touchdown lead, or if they thought he was going to shank it. It was like, a 41 to give them the 13 spot. late in the game. Like, if it was a high-scoring game, that really wouldn't have mattered. New England most likely would have went for it there, possibly ended the game. But as it came down, Rams still had a shot. But, Jeff, you came in high on the Rams. You said the greatest show on turf, part 2. I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you that that's not true. So what are your thoughts after the game?
Well, I told you before the episode it was the greatest no-show on turf in the Super Bowl. Only putting up 3 points was not what I was expecting. And I was completely wrong before the Super Bowl because it's going to come out in 3 weeks that Todd Gurley had some sort of serious injury or something wrong in his knee where he's going to have probably like some kind of, orthoscopic cleanup of his knee. There's going to be something going on with that knee because he was not Todd Gurley. And they weren't able to establish the run like they thought they would. Todd Gurley didn't make an impact out of the backfield, which I was hoping he would. Jared Goff got exposed. That was the big takeaway I took away. And it's constantly a shame that I was even hinting at him being like Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner. And it was rough. I was rooting for the Rams hard, and nothing that I was predicting or hoping to see in that game happened at all. And I think one of the important things from a coaching standpoint, and I'm sure Matt will agree with this, Belichick outcoached Sean McVay. I thought if they were going to be able to control the ball, the game would turn out to be in the Rams' favor, but it was a complete opposite. At the end of the game, I think what it really boiled down to is that last drive. The Rams needed a stop, they needed a turnover, but the Patriots ran the ball, got their necessary first downs, and drained the clock. It didn't give the Rams a shot, kicking that field goal at the end to come back. The one thing I did want to say about the officiating, and Romo, as you guys were watching that game, giving out the scenario where you decline the holding penalty to put it to second down, stop the clock instead of accepting it and taking the 10 yards back. Why did the refs not announce the decision to decline it? Because they said the Rams accepted it, and there was no clarification. I don't know if you guys saw, Belichick was going crazy on the sideline. He wanted an explanation. He wanted to know what was going on, why it was being delayed. I thought that was poor officiating. They should have stated it. I mean, a lot of people out there were probably confused. I was kind of confused. I didn't know what was going on. What were you guys' thoughts on that?
I think Belichick, from a scheming point was on point. You look at it, I had some stats that the Goff thing, he's a young quarterback. If you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers couldn't even beat out an old Brett Favre for the beginning of his career. So it takes some years to get into the league. Most players don't jump into the league and become a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. He dared Goff to beat him. I saw a stat where I think the New England ran man defense 65% during the regular season. In the Super Bowl, they ran zone 90%. So they just sat in the box, loaded up, and said, go ahead. McVay was stubborn, kept trying to do man ball. I honestly didn't see anything that made me think that the Rams were a real threat in that game. Because when Goff did get out of the pocket, he couldn't find open guys. Was it Cooks that was wide open in the end zone? He missed completely, which should have been one of his first reads in that route because it was a post. He threw it late. It got knocked down, which was great recovery by the Patriots guy. But the way the game was played, Jeff, to your point about officiating, it was a run-heavy game. So I don't think officiating, besides the end of the game, where they're trying to sort out whether to take time away or whatever. I honestly didn't even notice it because Romo was talking the whole time about like this scenario and that scenario. And I'll say for the broadcasting point, I think he could have dialed it back some. He kept like calling out things that Tom Brady should have done and how quarterback or Super Bowl quarterbacks need to prepare. Like he kept making comments about Goff. And I thought, like, how does this dude even know? This is a guy that botched that extra point that cost the Cowboys their one real chance with him at quarterback. So why doesn't he just sit back and let them actually play instead of trying to get in the heads? Because he does do some great analysis, but I think he talked too much over that penalty play, and I think that's why you might have been confused because I was kind of confused, and I don't think he even I think CBS just kind of dialed it down because I think the one ref did say something and I don't think they actually had the audio on to see what he said. So I don't know what that scenario was, but it kind of made sense because my whole time I was more playing along the lines with, hey, what do they need to do here to get back into the game? I did agree with Romo on one thing. Rams should have thrown the Hail Mary immediately. They got up to the 50-yard line, and a lot of coaches, for whatever reason, they don't have a guy that sits there and tells them, hey, right now, Patriots have no guys deep. You need to take a shot deep. Why would you run a slant to the 30-yard line? And I think they wasted a play before it because there was like 30 seconds left. You run the Hail Mary. You take a shot. Who cares if maybe takes 7 seconds off the clock? But that's your best chance of getting the touchdown.
Yep.
They played for the field goal, which is what New England was set up for. Of course, it was a long field goal. He ended up missing it. Game over. Even if he would have made that, they would have had maybe a second or two to throw a Hail Mary up from a worse spot. I think they should have been ready to go, pretended like they were going to spike it. I think they ended up I think they actually did spike it. I can't remember. But that's the play right when they spiked it that they should have did a fake spike, Hail Mary play. It should have been drawn up. They just weren't ready. Try to think of my notes. I think that's pretty much all I had. Belichick was ready, and it was a complete turnaround from the Falcons Super Bowl game. Falcons, when they played the Patriots, they had their number, and then they just kind of played scared in the second half. Like Belichick, the last 2 Super Bowls, he's been a little bit more prepared from that Falcons game. So give him credit. Give the guy credit. He's able to make those adjustments, like I said, from man to zone and play to his team's strength. They don't have a lot of superstars on that team.
No.
Anything else you guys want to add?
To me, I think a big thing it's talked about, but it's really underestimated is how well Belichick game plans for some of these bigger games, because they talk about how, going in, New England's going to take away what you do best. And, in theory that it's sound, but to actually put that kind of scheme into place then and say, okay, well, we're as a team that likes to run the ball, what are they doing to take the run game away? And then force teams to do, stuff that they're uncomfortable with, the things that they haven't been successful with. And I thought it was interesting that he commented that they followed some of the plan that Detroit put together earlier in the year. And there's his old defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, working on a game plan that he's able to. This is where I think having so many coaches come from his tree, he can get a feel for what other teams have tried, because he knows those other coaches, recycling people in the league kind of benefits him, because he can say, okay, Patricia's obviously going to run New England scheme since he was there, and able to see, okay, this is what they did well, this is what they didn't do well in. And you almost have not specifically your players, but what he was trying to accomplish, and make it a little bit easier to game plan it.
And it's almost the entire league now. Didn't the Dolphins just hire a guy right after the Super Bowl from their staff? Was it the Dolphins? They hired the linebackers coach.
Yeah, he was their defensive signaler.
So you're just recycling guys. You have the Andy Reid tree, which is a large tree, and I guess it comes more from like the Bill Walsh. Wasn't he with Bill Walsh, like the West Coast side?
Yes.
And then you have the Belichick side, which just from being so successful, how many other guys are floating around. And you're right, it makes it very easy to plan against, because you work with these guys for how long? It's not like they almost have to hire like a Cliff Kingsbury, a guy from college that's not used to the NFL, and bring them in. You can hire a Belichick guy. I'm not saying they can't be successful, but I think they got to reach outside of their comfort zone for coordinators. Like, there's how many Cliff Kingsburys out in college? Look at Chad Morris. He's at Arkansas. He might not last much longer. I don't know why Patricia wouldn't be like, you know what? They know our stuff from New England. Let's bring him up. 2 great offensive minds and come up with a new scheme that's going to take us to that next level. Got to quit recycling coaches. And I don't know if it's dipping into college, not so much for head coaches, but try to get some of the higher coordinators, the hot young kids. like Lincoln Riley, they could have easily poached him when he was under Bob Stoops. 1 year, they knew he was hot from East Carolina. Get him while they're young, bring him up. It can't hurt the league. It's only going to make it better, I would think. I did have one more Super Bowl thing. I think, and this comes into our mailbag question before we move on in the show, and we're going to get back into some more. We have a football-heavy show today, but the mailbag question came in. I got a call about Tom Brady, and I thought early in the game he looked bad. I thought, oh man, this is going to give me shades of Peyton Manning. If you remember the Super Bowl we talked about where Peyton Manning starts to fall apart and he has the rubber arm. Tom Brady throws that duck down the sideline that gets tipped up and intercepted. So he wasn't looking sharp the first couple of drives until he kind of dialed in. So our question comes in, and it said, Tom Brady starting to look like his age is playing a factor. Now, do you worry so much that one day he loses his arm strength? Or is it more of a Brett Favre type scenario where he gets hit and it's like one hit away? So should New England be afraid that Tom Brady could go at any moment? And what do you think, Matt? Do you think, and which way do you think he would go? Just his arm gives out or he gets a bad hit?
I would say it's probably more on the side. Well, I would say it's going to end up being more injury based, but he seems to take his health seriously. So I'm curious to see what he does this offseason. Does he decide to step away? I mean, at this point, he passes everyone for Super Bowl wins. Well, what else could he be looking to put on his career? You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he retired or walked away.
Jeff, what do you think?
I think he's going to be more of a Brett Favre kind of situation. I think he's one hit away because I don't think his arm's going to diminish. And if it does, I believe his football knowledge and his ability to like predict where he's going to throw is going to trump his, if his arm does start to go a little bit. I think it's just one of those things like what was it, in 2008 or whatever, he took that hit blow, tore his ACL. At his age, he's only one bad hit, one bad situation away from breaking a bone, tearing a ligament, blowing a knee out, and then I'd have to say he's done at that point. But the arm strength, I don't think that's going to be his issue personally.
As a Tom Brady fan, I hope that the injury is the way he goes. I would hate to see him play and just be one of those guys that hangs on. I just think of the Peyton Manning, the way he went out. Yeah, he won the Super Bowl, but it wasn't because of him. And if anything, he was doing everything he could to lose that Super Bowl. And I would hate to see Tom Brady, because it's very lucky to get your team to the Super Bowl to go out like that, even with a bad arm. That defense was so spectacular. New England doesn't have the type of defense like that. They don't have those guys. They don't have the athletes that Denver was able to build up by tanking for so long. So he's never going to have a defense that carries him. So whenever his rubber arm kicks in, if it does, it's going to be like regular season losses to the Bills or the Dolphins. It's going to hurt so much worse. So I'd rather him, if he's not going to step away after a Super Bowl win, like he could have done this year. I told Jeff before the show, I was joking, that guy from Avengers has like that glove that he wears for the new movie where he has like 6 rings on it or something. Tom Brady could have got a replica, one of those made, and he just puts it on, wears it to the NFL draft, just with like his 6 Super Bowl rings in it. What is it, Infinity Stones or something?
Yeah,
I know.
Thanos.
Yeah, Thanos. So he just needs to get one of those. And since he's going to play next year, just wear it to the NFL like opening training camp. He just wears it. He could even sell them like a Tom Brady glove where you just have 6 rings. I think that would be awesome. Yeah. And so I hope that he's able to retire, and if he wants to get into coaching, he can come back to Michigan and lead us to 32 straight national championships. So,
hey, just to add one point to the whole Peyton Manning thing. Yeah, he looked horrible in that Super Bowl, and honestly, it was a awful way to go out. The Super Bowl was not fun to watch. He did everything he could to lose that game. But throughout that season, throughout the injuries, throughout Brock Osweiler coming in and all that good stuff, he did enough with his football IQ and his abilities to manage the game and let the defense win it. So even if Brady's arm diminishes, you can't tell me that Tom Brady doesn't have the football IQ that Peyton Manning had. Could he later in his career? I mean, it is later in his career, but a few years down the road, because he said he wants to play till he's 45. Would he form into more of a game manager? Use his football IQ, his knowledge to do just enough with, a great defense, maybe a running game. Who knows? He has the football IQ. There's no doubt about that.
But look at what he did during this Super Bowl. I mean, let's not try to make this out to be that he was driving the ball down the field. The plays that really set up the score were the shorter intermediate routes. So with that being said, as long as he's able to continually do that and take what defenses give him, I think it's plausible. But when you're asking him to do along the lines of what Roethlisberger is able to do, where more of his strength is throwing the deep ball, don't shake your head. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's two different styles.
I was going to say, I saw a stat during the Super Bowl, I think they put it up, where this whole postseason he had been sacked 0 times. So as long as Belichick, we can just add that in, as long as Belichick isn't leaving him out to dry like they did with Roethlisberger, and he's able to not take a hit, he could play forever, just throwing dink and dunk passes. So you're right.
Absolutely. But I also think that's to Tom Brady's credit as well, that he's willing to throw those routes, to check into those kinds of routes, where Roethlisberger is willing to live by the sword, die by the sword, and he stays back in the pocket longer because he knows, well, if I take a shot, I can still bounce off it and then throw it 70 yards and have him make a play.
And let's not be forgetting for Peyton Manning. He didn't just start to fall off. There was an injury there. He hurt his neck, and it was so bad that, remember, his wife started to take HGH to make him feel better at home. She had that shipment sent to her house, and Peyton Manning said it definitely wasn't for his neck. His wife was taking that. So just remember.
She's trying to make her head big, too.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the fact that he ever played after that neck injury, most players could have never played again. So hats off to Peyton Manning for able to play and let alone win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, true. Let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I want to do a little intro on the Alliance of American Football now, because I want to keep our show's going to stay, even though football usually ends now. We're definitely a football-heavy show. So this is something that we're going to be keeping an eye on. And they started to, just an hour before the show, they set in stone some of the rules that were kind of up in the air. So there's 8 teams in the league. It kicks off this weekend, figuratively, because there are no kickoffs in this league, which I think is the one thing that I hate the most. Everybody starts at, the rules. Everybody starts from its own 25. You just send the offense out. And they did like a scrimmage a week ago, like Matt had talked about previously, that they're very kept it under wraps. So it wasn't like a preseason per se. They were trying to get a feel for the new rules. Let's see what they said. They're doing some stuff with targeting. They're calling it from the booth or something like that. If you get a helmet-to-helmet spear, it's not called on the field. It can be picked up. They're calling it the 9th official, which is exactly what I wanted from the NFL. Just put a guy in the booth. Don't give him a weird name like the 9th official, but just go ahead and have him be like the head. He's in the booth. He's like an older guy. Because let's be honest, like, remember how Ed Hockley was always jacked up? Like, no refs are going to be that into working out well until like their 60s and 70s. So once they reach an age where they can't run on the field, put him in the booth. Like, they have the expertise. They've been reffing for how long? That was the main thing. There were no onside kicks or point after field goals. So when teams score a touchdown, they must try for a 2-point conversion. They can still kick field goals during the game, but not in overtime. So you can have a kicker on your team, but when you get to overtime, you have to try to score a touchdown. And the play clock is going to be 35 seconds. That might be overtime. I think it's 40 regularly. Let's see what else, because this is just kind of like a weird bulleted list. Onside kicks, since those are out, If a team is trailing by 17 points or inside of 5 minutes remaining in the game, they can convert a 4th and 12, which that was up in the air last time we went through these, on their 28-yard line to keep the ball. So they would still have to drive, I guess, the length of the field. But those are the big rule changes. And in overtime, they're not doing sudden death. They're doing each team gets the ball once. 1st and goal from the 10. Like, are you kidding me? That could be even worse than what people say for colleges. Teams have to score a touchdown and go for 2, and then they can either match or go for the win. And if they don't score, games can end in a tie. And head official Mike Pereira said it creates some excitement if there is a tie. Which, why? Why? Just move it back to the 50 and let them go. But I'd like to get your guys' thoughts. We'll start with you, Jeff. What do you think of this new league, and do you think you'll watch some of it?
I'm curious to see what it's like, and I will watch some. The one thing I'm not sure if you have it there or not, but I was told that there's not going to be any commercials, which makes me very interested because I'm so sick and tired of watching the NFL and seeing the 5 minutes commercials every 2 minutes. At least that's what it feels like, how many commercials there are. The one thing I don't like that play, I didn't realize this how the overtime will be. I think college has it perfect. Put it at 25. I like college overtime a lot. I know a lot of people don't, but the way they have this set up, it's almost like a high school overtime being from the 10, which I'm not really a fan of. But I don't know what they need to do in the NFL or this league, but they need to fix the whole overtime situation. I've always been a fan of college. You're shaking your head. You must not be. But
no, I like the back and forth. I just think 25 is too close. And they put this in the 90s when kickers, were doing wide rights and wide lefts all the time. The kickers don't do that anymore, right, Matt? So they know exactly what they're doing. Just move it back to the 40. Start it at the 40. Because then you can't, because what happens, Jeff, and this is why I'm not a fan. Let's say your defense is on the field. The other offense goes ahead and like they fumble the ball or something. The other team gets the ball. All they have to do is kneel and kick a field goal, or they don't even have to kneel. They just run a team out and kick the field goal. At least give them a chance. Like, okay, sure, the other team fumbled or whatever, but at least make it a challenge. It's not as exciting. If one team gets a turnover, it's it's like a moot point. Or let's say, for example, you take a sack the first play. If you have a good, decent kicker, he can still make a 50-yard field goal. Yeah. So, like, you could go backwards for 3 plays in a row, running up the middle, and then still kick the field goal like it's no big thing and win the game. Just move it back to the 40, and then if someone's doing that, they have to be kicking 60-yard field goals, and they would be a beast.
Yeah,
so, but
look over the last couple of years, though. I mean, look at the playoffs this year. The Bears couldn't make a 42-yard field goal. If you start at 25, it's at least a 42-yard field goal.
Well, what's extra point? Where's the extra point from? Isn't it from like the 30 or something?
I thought it was 15. I could be wrong. I thought it was like a 33-yard field goal attempt.
You might be right. That. I think that might be the 15.
Somewhere on those lines. But I mean, extra points weren't automatic this year for our boy Boswell. So
Jeff, come on. The Steelers had it rough enough. You don't have to be laying into them. We already had to talk about Antonio Brown.
Yeah, but the reoccurring issue that no one wants to talk about, but we have to talk about. But no, they definitely get back to the point though. They need to figure out something with the overtime. This new football league, I'm excited. I'm very curious, and maybe it's gonna be a chance for some of those players that came out of college, their NFL careers didn't go the way they wanted to. Maybe they can excel in this league. Maybe go to the CFL, the XFL, or maybe they can use this as a rejuicing period and maybe go at it again for the NFL. I don't know, but I'm excited. Give me something to do, here in the offseason of the NFL.
Matt, what are your thoughts on the league?
Well, I'm curious to see how they're going to do it because when they announced that they were starting this league, I thought that it was just a quick way to dilute attention away from the XFL when Vince McMahon decided he was going to jumpstart the XFL. So I want to just see what the league's going to be and what their intention is, because it seems like, well, I'm gonna reserve judgment until I actually see what the product looks like, because it sounds like they're talking the right things and they seem to be heading in a good direction, but I want to see what the actual product on the field looks like, because you're seeing some of the same recycled people, and I want to see if it's going to look like the same product that you're seeing with the NFL, or if they actually do step outside the box and do some things to mirror trends in college football.
Well, just a history lesson for people that don't remember the XFL, a lot of stuff that they did was picked up and adapted by the NFL, especially game presentation-wise, like the sky cam, showing people run the routes, other things like that were really spearheaded based from McMahon and his experience with WWE and how they were able to show like replays and things like that. NFL didn't really do that up until that point. So if you watch an XFL game, it's more modern compared to like the Super Bowl coverage than if you go back and watch an NFL game from that same time period. They were more along the lines of, hey, let's show our sideline reporter giving you a breakdown, or here's the head coach standing here. They weren't really showing replays and things like that. So if the AAF can take that to the next level, which I don't know if they can at this point, just because technology is already at the level, they almost have to take it to more of an online type thing. Let people interact with players, and you got to be more out there. I don't know if they're going to do that. If they try to do what the NFL is doing, it's going to fail. We saw the Super Bowl ratings go down once again. It was the lowest in 10 years because people are tired of not seeing the football stuff. Like you said about commercials, Jeff, show me more football stuff. If you're going to do, and when they say by no commercials, I wonder if it's going to be like the Premier League or soccer where they show it like half and half. Half is the ad and half is the game. So it's on the same screen, so you're not really taking it away. But I want to see some more of the actual football stuff. You should be able to learn the game while you watch the presentation. Not get cuts to, hey, here's so-and-so superstar. Look, they're at the game. Oh, here is another cheerleader situation or something like that. And I don't even mind if they show cheerleaders if they're showing part of the game presentation. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it's going to be a flash in the pan because I think we mentioned it as one of our high tempos last week or the week before that they signed a multi-year deal with one of the networks. So they're ready to go, and whether this could even merge into the XFL. But this is spearheaded by Hines Ward and Troy Polamalu along with some other investors. So those guys, Pittsburgh favorites, they know football. Let's see if they get it done. Remember, Hines has been doing stuff with NBC for Notre Dame for a while. Him and I think Doug Flutie were on that team. So let's see what he learned from that and see if they can get something up. Anything else you guys want to talk about professional football-wise before we get into some college stuff and wrap the show up?
Nope.
No, we're good.
All right, because got some signing day stuff. I have the topics a little bit different. So for the Big Ten, the big news today is that Pep Hamilton is no longer the quarterback coach at the University of Michigan. I think everyone saw the writing on the wall when they hired Gaddis from Alabama to take over the offensive coordinator position, because Pep Hamilton was like the assistant offensive coordinator. Harbaugh made it seem like he was the offensive coordinator, and Pep was his passing game coordinator. He's completely turned it over, and I said that's exactly what I wanted to see, because that's what Brian Kelly did. He turned over the offense to a dedicated coordinator. Harbaugh's never done that. He makes the move a day before signing day. I don't know if that's going to cause any flips on signing day. I think this signing day is kind of dead. At least it feels like that to me. The other big one in the Big Ten is how Penn State closes. They had double-digit players in the transfer portal. Are they going to use those missing players, and are they going to be able to backfill their class? Because I thought they were low. I think they had 21, 22 signees are in the early period. They can fill that up and even oversign a bit, I think up to like 30 or something. If they need to fill out those transfers, we'll see what happens. How is Franklin going to close this out? And Ohio State, I don't know. We'll see what Ryan Day does, but I think that whole situation with Urban Meyer really messed up their recruiting class. And I don't think the Big Ten is going to have any surprises. I think you're going to see Michigan and possibly Penn State finish in the top 10. Ohio State slightly behind them. And then the rest of the conference needs to pick up their game, if I'm being honest. So, Matt, what about the ACC? I know there was some Florida State stuff going on. What are you looking at going into signing day?
Well, going into signing day, they've really picked up on their recruiting, and so they picked up one of the higher rated kickers. They picked up a couple other pieces that potentially could come down to where they're signing. I know there's a lot of speculation right now going on with Nick Cross out of Maryland. He's a Maryland product that potentially could be flipping to Penn State. So there are some theatrics with that I think Florida State's at an advantage going into this second part, because now, where with the early signing day, they weren't sure who their offensive coordinator was going to be, and there was some things up in the air because Walt Bell jumped to UMass, that they have some of those relationships built with Bryles, and he was able to look at some prospects and say, this is what we're running. I think it helped them with the transfer portal of pulling in some offensive linemen and trying to get somewhat of they just bottom line is they have to upgrade the offensive line, and if they can get one or two more guys, I think that would be a big benefit for them going into spring ball.
Do you think they finish near the top 10? Right now they don't have any 5 stars. I think it's the first time ever since around 2000, when the recruiting services came in, that Florida State, and Miami going into this last day have no 5 stars committed. So do you think they're able to get that top talent that could bump them into that competing with Clemson area?
I would say yeah. I mean, I think that it's the talent from what they've recruited previously has been there. One of the things that's really been a weak spot has been their quarterback. Not only their depth, but their recruiting. Progressively since Winston won the national championship in 2013, almost every quarterback prospect, and I'll withhold reservation for Blackman right now, almost every single one is either transferred or belly flopped, because they haven't panned out, and it's a black eye on Jimbo, being that he had success with other quarterbacks, and at the tail end of his time at Florida State, he just couldn't get the quarterbacks to produce. And as of right now, there's one scholarship quarterback on campus, and that's Blackman. The only other quarterback they have right now is the transfer kid from Louisville. So that's definitely an issue that hopefully, if they can get somebody signed on the new signing period and upgrade some depth, otherwise might be running some single wing this year.
Yeah, right now, from a conference perspective, it looks like Clemson's head and shoulders above the rest of the league. And I hear a lot of talk about Virginia making a run this year, but you have to recruit at a level that puts you in the playoff conversation. Because when you're there, and the way they've been doing this beauty contest picks, if Virginia wins the league, their non-conference schedule hasn't been the best. Like, I believe they lost to Indiana a few years ago, or they played them. And when that's your type of level, that's not going to get you the bump that you need playing in that. Which division is that? Is that the Coastal, or is that the other one?
No, I think Virginia's in the Atlantic.
I can never get them straight. It's the weaker division. Like, they're not in Clemson's division.
Oh, well, then they're in the Coastal. They're in the Coastal.
Yeah. Aren't they? Yeah, because the other one's NC State, Louisville, Florida State. Like, all the heavy hitters are in the other one except for Virginia.
All the heavy hitters in the
Virginia
Atlantic.
Tech. Yep. So Virginia, if they're going to make noise, they need to do it on the recruiting front. They have to take guys away from Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's been losing players to Mike Locksley, of all people. I saw when he's been able to pull in some of those Virginia Tech players from the transfer portal, which helps. It definitely helps the Big Ten having Maryland strong, but I'll say that I think that they really don't need them strong. And I don't even know if it helps the Big Ten, because Maryland beat Texas, and what did that do? Texas still finished in the top 10 as a 10-win team. You can't tell me that. I know Michigan ended the season kind of poorly, but they're both 10-win teams. Michigan didn't lose to Maryland and hasn't lost to Maryland since Harbaugh's been there. Tom Herman can't beat Maryland. So you can't tell me that Texas is a better team. So Maryland being strong doesn't do anything. No one respects them. So, I don't know. Jeff, you hear anything on the Pitt front?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's a very, very important season for Pat Narduzzi. He had, as a Pitt alum and a lot of my friends going to Pitt, we had high expectations. Him coming from Michigan State, being a great D coordinator there, hasn't really done it. Beat Penn State once, beat a couple good Clemson teams that are highly ranked, but other than the kind of flash in the pan wins, they haven't had consistent seasons. Their best season, I believe, is totaling 8 wins, 8-4. That's not going to cut it when you're talking about trying to make Pitt a perennial powerhouse like it used to be in the 80s and late 70s, early 80s. Just looking at their 24/7 Sports, their rankings right now, they're ranked 50 in the country recruiting. Last year, they were 46. This year, they're 9 in the ACC, previously 8 last year. So he's not getting it done in the recruiting on the recruiting front, and that's the biggest thing he had to do. I saw he filled in some Pennsylvania boys, which is good, but looking at the recruiting class, they're only 3 stars. I don't even see a 4-star on here, unless I'm looking at it incorrectly. The only recruit that I really like is they finally got a quarterback, it looks like. He's ranked number 22 as a pro-style quarterback. He's from South Carolina. He's 6'6", and that's one thing that Pitt has lacked for years, is that big, tall, pro-style quarterback who, I'm just looking at him quickly, has a strong arm. So maybe they can bring him in, develop some of these 3-star recruits, and maybe put together a season. But as just pure talent recruiting, it doesn't look like he did it this year, and he really needed to.
Jeff, you forgetting all of the NFL quarterbacks Pitt has been putting out, like Peterson and Tom Savage?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, really good quarterbacks. And then the quarterback play last year didn't cut it either. But see, that's the thing with Pitt. Every year we have 1 or 2 good running backs, some defensive players that play pretty well. If you look at Maddox, I was every game, I swear, in the last couple of years, watching him play corner for Pitt, I was throwing out some cuss words, this and that. Didn't think he was playing well. Then he gets to the NFL. He gets a chance to develop, maybe have some better coaching. Maddox played extremely well this year for the Eagles, played well. At least I think he played well. I'm biased in the playoffs for the Eagles. But for the running back position, for them, Pitt to be as bad as they've been in the last decade and have some of the running backs they've had. I mean, they've had Shady McCoy. They had Dion Lewis. They had James Conner. They had Ray Graham before he hurt his knee. Ray Graham was phenomenal when I was there. He was one of those flash players, catch the ball in the backfield, make all the cuts. But last 10 years, they've had, some talent and haven't done anything. And, they had my boy Aaron Donald. So it's not like Pitt doesn't have, had some special players, but they haven't put a team together. And for the longest time, it's been the quarterback position. So maybe this new recruit, with his size and arm strength, maybe he can change change some things up in the atmosphere at Pitt.
Jeff, I'll do a callback to the beginning of the show when I congratulated Ty Law on making the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
A Pittsburgh guy. Do you think he went to Pitt? Yeah. No.
He did not.
I've said it multiple times on the show. Matt's ridiculed me. Pitt needs to hire Dave Wannstedt back as recruiting coordinator. He's the only coach they've had that could recruit the Pittsburgh area. It starts there. You can't lose guys to Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State that are right in your backyard. Hall of Fame caliber guys, you can't have them going elsewhere. It's like whenever Rutgers started that thing for the Fence to Garden that everyone thought was a joke. If they would have went out and executed that and were able to get players to stop going to Michigan and Penn State, they could have built their team a lot faster than what they're doing. They're losing recruits. Pitt is in the same boat. You're getting poached by the same exact teams that New Jersey's getting poached by, and that's how you take the next step. The good thing for Pitt is they don't play in the Big Ten, so you can use that as a selling point. Like, hey, we're all up and down the East Coast. You want to go to Florida to play, or you want to be stuck playing in Minnesota? You want to go to Wisconsin? It could be snowing up there. Let's go. You can travel. We're going to go down to Miami. That's our Thanksgiving game. When it's normally snowing up north, we have a rivalry with Miami dating back to the Big East days. That's who we play on Thanksgiving weekend. I think that's who Pitt plays normally. So
yeah, they do.
Go ahead and take it to the next level, but you got to keep those guys. And what they really need to do right now is Virginia Tech is flailing. Pitt's in that same division with Virginia and Virginia Tech. They can't let Virginia take over the Virginia Beach, the Tidal area, the Eastern North Carolina area that made Virginia Tech the program that it is. Pitt could recruit that area heavily. You're not going to win all the battles in state with Penn State being there, let's be honest. Take Virginia. Penn State doesn't play in Virginia. They've been able to pull some of those Virginia guys. Pitt plays in Virginia at least once a year. I think they're split with Virginia Tech. So they're going to play in Virginia at least once a year. You can use that to create a new pipeline. They just need to get some guys in there, hire a bunch of recruiting coordinators, and go get it done.
Yeah.
They should not be 50th. They should not be 50th.
And just to add to your point, geographically it hurts Pitt because they have Ohio State on the left, Penn State on the right, West Virginia just an hour south of them. Michigan's not far away. So it's tough for them. But you're right. They need to keep the WPIAL kids. There's a lot of Hall of Fame players in the NFL that came from the WPIAL. Ty Law, Hall of Famer. Ditka, Hall of Famer. I even think Joe Montana, some Dan Marino was a Pitt boy, grew up in South O, Hall of Fame guys right out of the WPIAL, and they haven't been recruiting the WPIAL. I don't know. It started, I believe, right after Wannstedt left. Pitt's big thing was to recruit the Florida kids. That sounds good on paper, but keep your boys at home. You got to keep the guys in the WPIAL, and if you want to go down and poach some guys from Florida, that's fine, but they haven't got it done, so they need to change it up. And you're right. They're going to, with having Virginia Tech right there, they could easily steal some players from there, considering how bad they've been in recent years.
And they could also take players from Ohio. Don't forget that when Lloyd Carr was recruiting Ohio heavily, that was when Michigan won the national championship, and they had two Heisman players from Ohio, Charles Woodson and Desmond Howard. Ohio State is only one school. They can't take everyone from Ohio. And the benefit to Pitt is they are so close to the Ohio border. They're one of the next teams in. Harbaugh hasn't been recruiting Ohio for whatever reason. Michigan State's there. So Pitt's actually recruiting against, you can take the Ohio State leftovers and field a good team that has a built-in hate for the Big Ten schools that passed them over, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. You get those guys that have that hatred built in. You get a bunch of guys from Pitt, and then you backfill with people from the Virginia area. And if you want to go to Florida, great. But it is really hard to recruit there unless you're hiring coaches from there. Or you're getting guys from like the IMG Academy that lived in Pennsylvania. If you go back to the John O'Corn, I know he didn't really pan out, but he was from Huntington area, Pennsylvania. He went down to IMG and played in Florida, technically a Florida recruit. Bring some of those guys back. Recruit Philadelphia. Georgia had two top guys from Philly. Didn't we talk about one of the quarterbacks off the show? He's going to Ohio State now.
Yep.
Don't lose guys to Southern teams that are in the state. That's my last thing that Pitt needs to do. Getting into signing day, it's going to be a disappointment for Pitt. I don't think they should ever be outside the top 30. I don't know if they could be top 10, if I'm being honest. But they should be right there at the Michigan State level where they're in the top 30. They're a top 30 program all time, if not higher. Recruit it. You're not a 50th program.
No.
You're in a division you could win every year. Let's be honest. Right now, Virginia Tech's not there, and Miami's not there. I mean, Christ, you beat Miami when they were what? Was Miami ranked number 2 when they lost to Pitt?
Yeah.
So that's my final thoughts. Go around the horn for the final bell. Matt, we'll let you jump in. Anything you got?
Just the bizarre DeAndre Francois situation. They had the audio released of some domestic issues. Willie Taggart came out, dismissed him from the team, and then the can of worms was open, and it went from his girlfriend recanted her story to her account was hacked to Francois is now in the transfer portal. It's all over the place. I'm curious just to see how the rest of the story develops.
It's crazy that would happen right before signing day. Florida State needed to keep some continuity, and then they have that happen. When you're trying to build an identity, it's very hard. But I'm always for if there's going to be a locker room issue, and let's be honest, Willie Taggart did the right thing. If you have legal issues, there's no excuse for keeping guys around, especially because didn't they have some backlash just this week about the coaching hire that they made? When did they make that? The Bryles one? I felt like they made that a couple weeks ago.
Oh, it was made a while back.
And now it just came into news. Very conveniently, right before signing day. Did you notice that, Matt?
I did, but I feel like there's so much hatred right now towards any and everything that Taggart's trying to accomplish that it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs.
All right, well, we'll see if they can get it straightened out because they're right in there. Miami's doing whatever they're doing. They can't recruit a lick, even though they brought it back Manny Diaz. Florida State, they're the team that can pick up those scraps and take it to the next level and directly compete with Clemson. No other ACC team seems to really be trying. No offense, Jeff, for Pitt, but go ahead. You got anything for the final bell?
Got a couple things. Just mention hats off to Tom Brady, 6 Super Bowl wins. He himself has tied the Steelers with the most Super Bowl wins of all time. The Rams, greatest no-show on turf. Hopefully they can rebuild and maybe make a run next year. But I'm going to say right now, in a couple weeks, he's going to come out. Gurley had a serious injury that they disclosed. Didn't want to say. Hopefully it's not a very serious injury, and he can be ready to play next year. Pitt getting killed on the recruiting front. They're going to be irrelevant in the ACC until Pat Narduzzi or maybe another coach can recruit. That's my final thing for the day.
They're not irrelevant, though. They're in their division, and they can't be every year because they're not in. They're like in the equivalent of the Big Ten West.
Yeah, they were in the ACC championship this year too.
Yeah, you can win your division and get in, but to actually compete and not be a joke in that game, you need to be able to get double-digit wins going in. Yep. And you can only do that if you're recruiting the top talent. But I will say this, that Gurley, I think it could be up to draft pick losses if they were lying about injury reports. And I honestly thought that they could have used that to their advantage. Why not just list him as injured? Everyone else was already speculating that he was injured. Have the coach come out and say, yeah, we're planning on having a pass-heavy attack and try to throw Belichick off. Like, use some gamesmanship with it. Don't be like, they were worrying about all kind of other interview stuff, like were they going to visit the White House? Are they going to do this? What's going to happen with certain players? Gurley, what are you going to do if you win? Like, all you guys shouldn't be out there talking about all this stuff that's going to happen if you win. Like, just win. I didn't notice any Patriots players answering questions like that. So,
no,
you got to be focused. I did have one more thing. Penguins right now, they were down to the Hurricanes. It was 4-0. They're second in the division, the Metropolitan. As of when we started to do the show, I lost track there, but we will see. I think they're ready to make a run. I took off the Steel City update from the official show transfer because we're going to get into a dead period here where, let's be honest, Pirates aren't going to have a lot of news because they haven't been making any moves. And it's only going to be Penguins. So we're just going to go ahead and add them to the topics, but it's still going to be a football-heavy show with the AAF starting. So make sure you tune into that on Friday, and hopefully you can get picked back up so we can keep watching some games. But thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show. Make sure you like our page, Southbound Sports, also the same on Instagram, and S-Bound Sports on Twitter. And we will see you next week.